hand it over to you and you can intro yourself.
Oh, well, Mick Hawes company called Builder's Business Blackbelt, which is a business coaching organisation with our crosshairs on owners of building businesses, traditionally like the domestic type building business. Interestingly enough, as we started to build our focus and our avatar a while ago, it was our target was a husband and wife run building business. And just recently, we started to do some work with, I'll give James Brown a plug, BizTech guru, who's with Systemology. He implements Systemology, and we've been working with him. And part of that process helped me redefine our target again. And now it seems to be a younger single guy, which is kind of the opposite of what we're doing before, purely because it brings a tremendous energy. These young people seem to bring this tremendous energy to the group, and everybody has benefited from it, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, we've been doing this for 9 years now. I've been in the coaching space for over 30 years, and been through all sorts of iterations of just personal development to small business. And I thought small business was a niche until I learned about niching and discovered that was small business isn't a niche, and sort of went a bit left of field for a few years and started doing performance coaching with elite athletes, and work with some of our top cricket players, and was with Australian Tennis Australia for a number of years, working with our top tennis players, and went on tour with Samantha Stosur and things like that, and it was pretty interesting. And learned that there are lots of parallels, lots of things that we can learn from elite individual performance and elite team performance that are parallels to business. So there's lots of things that we can learn from looking over the fence.
So interesting you mentioned that. I had not been well last week, and I'm not very good at sitting still, particularly not very good at sitting on the lounge, particularly not very good at watching television for any more than a short space of time. But being sick, I kind of had no choice. But I realized that, I mean, I love sport. I love motorsport. That's no secret for anyone who's been following me. But again, I watched the Netflix Beckham show, and then obviously the V8 Supercars, and then I watched the Formula One. And again, just that what we can learn from sports people and sports teams, from a business perspective, like there's so many, as you say, so many parallels. Yeah. And I think sometimes we get into business and we feel like we don't have a real business mind about us, but more often than not, if you're in a trade space, you're generally a sports lover. So we can look to different sports teams and sports individuals for what they're doing and how they're doing it, and how they're marketing themselves and how they're making the most of opportunities. And I think I just love sports. From a business perspective. I'm always looking from a business perspective, and it's the thing that makes the most sense to me. So no surprises that you slid right back into business coaching without any problems.
Yeah, but I'm still looking at I watched the Beckham thing, watched the last episode last night, in fact. But there was at one stage I was coaching a V8 supercar driver, and got to go to Bathurst and get driven around the track and put the headphones on and listen to what's going on, and I was like a kid in a candy shop, just watching all of the elements of data that you can get, and we were able to get somebody else's data who was going faster and overlay our driver's data on it, and you can just see just slight little differences in late braking or how much input they put into the steering wheel at a certain point in the track, and you go, oh, this is wild. And like, so what can we learn from that? It's data, know your numbers. Like Profit First is a perfect example of that. What's your profit percentage? I should be able to wake you up from a deep sleep in the middle of the night and go, what's your Profit First percentage? And you should be able to tell me. Why I'm standing watching you sleep in your bedroom late at night is a whole nother story. But and then I've gotten right into, because I'm a mad keen sailor, Sail GP, where they're in these 50-foot foiling catamarans, and they've got one from various countries, so there's 10 or 12 of them, and they'll do 100 kilometres an hour, sailing at 100 kilometres an hour, and they're strapped in, and there's horrendous injuries if people fall off the boat, and it's crazy to watch. But the reason I bring that up is another, I think, essential mindset shift that we need to have in business is sharing our data with other businesses instead of this holding everything close to your chest. So in Sail GP, there's something like 40,000 pieces of data being recorded while they're racing every second.
Oh, wow.
It's just phenomenal. Everything is measured, but everything is being shared with every other team in real time. So you're on a racetrack and you're seeing, how the main trimmer or the wing trimmer or, the flight controller, they call them in a boat, what they're doing at any given time. So other teams can go, oh, they're doing that, so we could do that. And it improves the performance of everybody. So the Australians are incredible. They've won the first 2 seasons, and they're ahead in this season as well. And they always just seem to find a way to win. So it still comes back to that talent. But for me, what makes a lot of sense, and I'd love, and we try to bring this into business with our black belt group, with all of our builders. They love sharing the information and data. And what it does is it makes everybody better. So if you're making your competition better by sharing your information, you have to sail faster to stay ahead of them. So everybody's getting better, and all of the advances that come from this sort of approach trickle down into other parts of, the sport as far as sailing is concerned. And the same with business. I feel like black belt, we've got this laboratory where we're testing these things and sharing all our resources and data. And then we talk about it on our podcasts and what have you. And I really feel that there is a change happening in the building industry where it's not so foreign to be paid for a quote. It's not so foreign to have a real professional approach to it and turn up on time and ring back when you said you would, amazing things like that. I think it's getting better.
And it's something that I talk to my clients about all the time. Firstly, the data. We can make better decisions when we've got more data. And also that we as a collective should be making the industry better, not, oh, I found this thing that I can do better than you, so I'm going to keep it, not tell anybody. I just find that completely bizarre. I don't understand why we aren't sharing more and so on, but there is still so many people, oh, we can't do that.
Yeah.
Why can't we? Because we can't, or we've never done that before. I'm like, doesn't mean we can't change the rules.
It's hilarious. We've had very few, but it's happened a few times, people joining our blueprint program, and part of that is showing up once a week for a live Q&A, and we've had people that just won't show up to that live thing, and when they're asked why, it's like, well, I don't want to share what I'm doing with these other builders. And I felt like saying, dude, you're applying or jumping into a coaching program because your business is rubbish. So what are you holding on to that stuff for? It's obviously not doing any good. So you might as well share it so we can go, well, that's crap. Here, try this better one.
Let's make some improvements there.
Just help each other. That's the way forward.
And I think it's interesting you talk about how you've changed, your avatar has changed. And I think that's something that I see with business owners, that they feel like that they've always been, a builder who has done domestic, or an electrician who has done this or whatever else, and that's all they can do. And we can change and evolve. I always talk about having fun in my business. And if I'm not having fun, I don't do it. I employ somebody, or I find a specialist who can do it, because that's my rules now. Now, did that happen? Did I do that right from the beginning of businesses? No. But I'm at the point now where I will much prefer to make sure I'm working on the things that I know that I'm really good at and that are going to be the best time savers for me, rather than spending time and money on things that I'm not super good at, because then they don't really get done properly.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I see with our trades is that, oh, I've got to do it. I've got to do this because this is what I've always done, rather than having a bit of a, let's pull back a little bit and have a look and see if there's anything else we can do. Perfect example, builders charging for quotes. Like, why shouldn't they be charging for their time and their effort? Because it's not like it takes them 10 minutes to put a quote together.
No.
Usually there's quite a time investment in that. So I love that. I mean, I've come into your group and shared things with Profit First a number of times, and I just love that in your group you are always so like, what else? What else can we do? How else can we do it better? So coming back to the Profit First, I would love to hear your story about how you got into Profit First and how long ago that was and what it did for your business.
Well, if I burst into tears, you'll understand. It was, I guess, well, I'd have to ask Mike how long ago the book was released, because I had a podcast many, many moons ago called Small Business Smart Solutions. You're going to look up the date when it was published. But I'm thinking it's got to be 10 years.
Yeah, I think it would be.
Yeah. And
9 years. 2014. So this is the original one. So 2014.
Yeah, well, that sounds about right, because I had a podcast called Small Business Smart Solutions, and for some bizarre reason, we were getting like 8,000 downloads a week from this episode, but they were all United States, and like it took me a year to figure out what the bloody hell am I doing a podcast talking to Americans when our market is in Australia. But anyway, I'm a slow learner. And I used to interview authors, and so I reached out to Mike and interviewed him about the Pumpkin Plan, which I just absolutely loved. He's a funny dude. And I just would be driving around listening to that, laughing and learning amazing things. And so I had Mike on the podcast, and then about 3 months after our interview, he reached out and says, I'm about to launch a book called Profit First. Can I come back on the podcast? Sure. And me being a studious interviewer, thought I'd better read it so I know what I'm talking about. And the bizarre thing at the time, like the old office, and the name of the business back then was uncoverhiddenprofits.com. And the video background was on the wall of my office, and I was sort of sitting at a desk, and on the wall in 2-foot high letters was Uncover Hidden Profits. And I'm sitting there reading Profit First. And this is, I'm not saying this for effect. When I got to certain points in it, I felt physically ill, because here I am running a coaching business called Uncover Hidden Profits, and it turns out I didn't even know what a profit was, because it was all this concept of this thing on a profit and loss sheet where it was actually cash. A shoebox under the bed, like it doesn't matter where you put it. And I'd been in business for 18 years at this stage, and I just felt physically ill because of the horrible job that I'd done over the last 18 years. I realised that I'd just botched it so badly, but feeling, it's the second time that's happened to me. I'd felt really, really bad, and it's a good thing to feel really, really bad, like get to that point of disgust. So you go, I am not going to live like this anymore. And so I implemented Profit First that day, and we struggled and had arguments and fights for the next at least 90 days, and that's all it took. Like if you say it fast now, 90 days is quite quick to get back on an even keel and start to have some semblance of order and hope, because you've got a pathway forward. And back then, like, we were living in our family home. We'd had it for a couple of decades at that stage and still had a mortgage on it. And I never ever felt like I was ever going to get out from underneath this. And we implemented Profit First. And I think after about 4 or 5 years of implementing Profit First, we owned that place. I think we had 3 properties that we owned. We've sold a few of them now, and we've got a wonderful boat that I spend half my week on, and there is just zero money stress. I can get pissed off and angry and anxious about all sorts of other things, but not money. And I think that's such a cool thing. And if I could say that to anybody, is concentrate on getting your money act together as a priority, because I just find that money distress amplifies the circumstances of every other problem that you've got. If you've got a health issue and money problems, your health will be worse. If you've got relationship problems, your relationship will be worse. If you've got business issues, your business issues will be amplified because you've got money issues. Get rid of the money issues and a whole lot of other issues will just disappear without even having to be addressed. But I love Mike.
And I think that's a really good example. You thought you were doing the right thing with your uncover hidden profits. Like you thought, just like many business owners were, that you were doing it the right way. And it's not to say that not doing Profit First is the wrong way, but I always say it's a way to manage your cash. It happens to be a very easy, simple, successful way of doing it. But if you're not doing anything to manage your cash at the moment, at least give it a try.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not as politically correct as you, and I would say if you're not using the Profit First system, you are doing it wrong. Like to me, it's just black and white. And yes, there would be other people who are financially successful who don't implement Profit First. But if you looked at how they manage their money, they're doing Profit First. Like they're applying the principles. They just might be using a different language and calling their accounts different things. But their mental process and their disciplines are Profit First. And to me, it's just, here is a really simple system. It's like the lights came on when I read this, and it's like, my mum used to do this. She'd get housekeeping and put some in an envelope under the sink for groceries, and some for clothing, and some for a holiday, and that's how they used to do it. And then they brought out credit cards, and it all turned to custard.
And that's a good point about like the credit cards and the overdrafts and the loans and so on and so forth. And I hear so often, you would probably hear this too, it's like, but particularly builders, I'm a builder, I have to have my overdraft. I can't survive without my overdraft.
Completely.
And
it's such a flawed philosophy.
And again, it kind of comes back to, they're hanging around with the wrong people.
Yep.
They're hanging around with people who are like, we can't do without an overdraft. You have to have your credit card. You've got to have the debt. Like, cash flow sucks. And this is what I say to my clients. I'm like, I know it's not, in Australia, standing around at a barbecue with a bunch of business owners, particularly tradies, and going, oh no, my cash flow is good. Oh, I don't have credit. I don't have an overdraft. Like, we know how that conversation is going to go, but that's what I aim my clients to be, that person. Now, whether they decide to vocalize that or not is another thing. But I want them to be there like, but we did the work. You put the system in place and did the work, and you can work without an overdraft. You can work without credit cards. It's just, I was talking to a client yesterday actually, and he's like, the credit card's being paid off, but I can't close it. I'm like, why can't you close it? He's like, but, and I'm like, close it, just close it.
Ceremonial cutting up here, use my scissors. There's a lot of weird, and I say that like, I'm better than everyone else, and I don't mean it to sound like that, because that's exactly how I used to think. And now that I've changed sides, you can see the error in other people's thinking. And I just recall going to a workshop or something a couple of years ago, and just listening to the conversations of all these business people. And there was some what most people would call successful business people in this room, just having a chat, how's business and all of that sort of stuff. and the whole conversation with everybody was focused on revenue. And I'm going, I think you've missed the point.
Wait. So interestingly, I get very, very nervous if I talk to a new client or talk to anybody and they lead with, my business turns over X amount of dollars. Because I know there is a 99.9% chance that that business is failing miserably. Because it's not, I don't care how much money you make, I care about how much money you keep. And it's just so interesting to hear those different conversations that, as you say, people don't know their numbers. It all comes back to the data. It doesn't have to be complicated. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love Profit First is it is a really simple system.
Yep.
Once we get out of our own heads, and I, just like you, I came to Profit First because my bookkeeping business was horrible. It was, I swore I'd never work for myself. My parents were self-employed. I was never going to have a business. Then I did promise myself it wouldn't be like everybody else's. And then guess what happened? A few years into it, it sucked and I hated it. And then I had that realization that I couldn't go back to work for somebody else because I'd been self-employed for a few years by this time and would make a terrible employee. And then that's when I went searching. That's when I found Profit First. And I think it's easy for people who aren't doing it and who are struggling to look at us and go, oh, easy for you. It's like, no. We had to go through that struggle and that realization. Nobody just waved a magic wand for us and everything was beautiful. And so what would you say was, thinking back now, it's been so long, what would you say was the biggest hurdle for you to get over and to consistently do Profit First?
Funnily enough, again, my answer sounds a little egotistical from the perspective that I didn't have any hurdle to get over because I just went, I had that absolute emotional experience of disgust.
Yeah.
Like it just hit me like a punch in the face and I literally felt like I was going to throw up because I just squandered 18 years of opportunity and thought I was doing the right thing. And so my commitment to Profit First hasn't wavered even to today. Like Julie yelled up the stairs just the other day. What is it? We're on the 11th.
Yeah. So you would have just done a profit distribution.
On the 9th, she yelled up the stairs, "You need to put some more money in our bank account. We need to pay some bills." I said, "Tomorrow." Yeah. Walks away in a huff because I just won't. Like to me and everybody that I help with Profit First, and I'm not a Profit First professional, I'm just a fan. Do it 100% or don't bother is my mantra, because I've worked with people who do it 95% and I don't like doing that like that. So I'll just tweak it, and it doesn't work because Profit First is an emotional system. It's not an accounting system. All it does is it changes your natural desire to make the right decisions. You make the proper financial decisions naturally without discipline. That's the bit I love about it. If you discipline yourself to follow the process, the right decisions take no discipline. And to me, it's like you're talking about, you've got to know your numbers, but you've also got to know which number is the one that you're going to make your decisions based on, or which number, when it starts to increase, you should feel good about. And I just remember when we first heard, we weren't Builder's Business Blackbelt at this stage. We're still back in the Uncover Hidden Profits Day, learnt about Profit First, and we were working with one of the state's largest agribusinesses at the time. They were one of our clients, and there was a manager and two owners, and the two owners just used to make the most bizarre decisions, and we couldn't change their behavior. Like they thought they were a $6 million business, and that truck's not so good anymore. We'd just go and get another truck. So they'd go and take out a lease, put it on the never for another truck or a trailer or a tractor or whatever it was. And the manager and the other girl who worked in the office who was doing the accounting we're trying to get them to change their behaviour, because we are hurting. Like we are dying the death of 1,000 paper cuts here. And the owners just wouldn't listen, because we have a $6 million business. And so we put them through the instant assessment when I learned about Profit First. And it turns out they weren't a $6 million business. It turns out that they were a $100,000 business. They weren't, they were just over a $500,000 business, not a $6 million business. And we sat around the table and showed them this. And lo and behold, their behaviour changed instantly. And all of a sudden, all of these old trucks and tractors and machinery and all of that was just sitting around the place was up for sale. Tightened the belt and not getting all of these leases and being really, really fastidious with their expenses and what have you. And thank God they did, because the very next season was an absolute disaster, the potato farmers. And they would have lost their houses had they not made those shifts just 12 months prior. So, Profit First saves lives. It saves marriages. It definitely saves businesses. We see that. We get that feedback so often with Blackbelt that if I didn't have Profit First, I would have lost my business and probably lost my house and definitely lost my relationship if I hadn't have had that in place, which is amazing. Mike needs to be really, really proud of himself. And, I hope he knows that the work that he's doing, how drastically and dramatically it's affecting people's lives. I'm sure he does, but it's good to remind him.
Yes. And that's one of the things that I see people come to me, they're like, oh yeah, I'm doing Profit First. And then when I have a look, I'm like,
no, you're not.
Black
and white,
Profit
folks.
First is so complicated. Nah, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
It is a really simple and efficient system when it's set up correctly. Yeah. And I always find it, I have clients who have tried to implement it themselves, and a very small number can do a really good job of that. But like anything new, we need to know exactly how it works. And for me, I always talk about, then we customize it for your specific business. And that's where people, because they don't have the training, can't take the system and then customize it correctly. They end up with this, I don't know what over there that doesn't work properly. And then coming back to that, saving lives and businesses and relationships and so on, that's exactly what it does. Like the amount of, I get a lot of emails from a Friday night to a Sunday night from people saying, oh my goodness, I'm debt up to my eyeballs. I've got ATO debts. I've got all these, like everything's going wrong. I rarely get those emails during the week. It is always from a Friday afternoon to a Sunday night, always.
You'd have great weekends.
And I have set it up in my business that my VA will jump into my emails twice a day on the weekend for that specific purpose. And if I get one of those emails, she messages me so I can jump in and send them an email back saying, let's have a chat next week, because I know how stressful that is for somebody to be at that point to finally reach out and then have to wait for the weekend or whatever for a reply. And just to give them that peace of mind that we can have a chat. The follow-up email is, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I could breathe again, or whatever else. And I think if that's one thing that we can get across to people is that, yes, it's a cash management system, but it does absolutely change every part of your life. And the way I take it as well from an expense point of view, when we're doing those reviews, I don't want you to be tight. I don't want you to be frugal. I don't want you to be stingy. If you want to spend X amount of dollars on whatever it is, great. But let's know what that is so we can build your business to be able to support that. So everybody's different in that regard. Some people like to be really frugal with their expenses. That also works. For me, it's more about just being aware of what your expenses are. Get rid of anything we don't really need. I use this example all the time. I had a client who had a insurance for a car, $72 a month. He'd sold the car 4.5 years prior. and it was still coming out of his bank account.
What?
Because it was just such a small amount, he didn't really pay much attention, didn't notice it. Thankfully for him, the insurance company gave him back 2 years worth of premiums, but he was still out 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And people always go, oh, that's ridiculous. He's not the only one. Like, there are so many clients I get who are like, oh, you know what? I found a policy that it was the car we sold, and for whatever reason, they didn't cancel it, or the insurance company didn't cancel it when they were asked. So it's always little pieces like that we find. And so I think for many people, they feel like they're going to have to cut back on everything, and they're not going to have any money, when that's true to a degree, but it is about finding that balance. And particularly in the trade space, we've had a good run with work for a number of years. Things will slow up. It has in some areas. It will pick back up again. I have no doubt. And I'm not here to doom and gloom it, because it happens. That's the cycle of business, but we have to prepare for it. And just like your farmers, we have to be prepared for those slow times, because you're then going to come out the other side in a much better financial position than most of everyone else, which then means you can make even more out of the next uptake along the way.
We've always got to be looking at the future. And I always remember Jim Rohn talking about the ant philosophy. I always wondered how he ever found out what ants thought, but he must have had some sort of superpower, and he said, this is what ants think. is that it's if they're in winter, it's like, summer's coming, this won't last, so it gives them hope. But in summer, it's like, winter's coming, we've got to prepare. Winter's coming, we've got to prepare. And to me, that's what Profit First is like, building up your war chest. I think you mentioned some people are frugal, and we still have interesting discussions about that here at home, because I personally think the single most important part of Profit First is the reward, because and I use this, some people go, well, why would you say that? Example of if you throw the stick for the dog, and the dog goes and gets it and brings it back to you, and it's all very happy, and didn't I do a good job? And you pick up the stick and kick the dog in the head, the dog goes, okay, and it'll go and get the stick again. But if you keep kicking it in the head each time you bring the stick back, after a while it'll stop bringing the stick back. And with Profit First, you've got to adhere to that reward thing and I say to people that when you do that profit distribution where you pay yourself a part of the profit account, I believe that if you spend that money on something where other people around you go, well, that was a bit frivolous, or that was a waste of money, you're onto something. I think you've just hit the perfect reward, because all that needs to happen is that it makes you happy. You feel good when you buy that thing or have that experience or whatever with the profit, because I can guarantee you that it will get to a point, and it doesn't even take that long, where the amount of money in your profit account that you should be distributing to yourself, it's very difficult to figure out what to spend. Like I, that I'm a mad keen tech idiot. and I remember, I just came back from Canada the other day, and in some airports where, you've got Tech to Go and all of these sort of techie shops and what have you. And I go in them all the time. And for the first time in a long time, I went into the tech shops and went, there's nothing in here that I want. Like, I've just, whatever I've wanted, I've just been able to go and buy. And it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling. But that feeling is always connected back to the disciplines of Profit First. So the reward and creating that neuro association of performing the Profit First disciplines and feeling good, performing the Profit First disciplines and feeling good. It's so critical. So it just becomes automatic.
Mm.
You will follow those disciplines. You will get the reward. You will feel fantastic. The good thing is that there will be other problems in your life that you'll be able to deal with. You won't be without problems. So, it just doesn't need to be a financial one. There will be other problems. And I think Dan Sullivan said that, if you've got a problem and you've got money, you haven't got a problem.
Yeah. And I know
that
it can be hard for people who are in a bit of a financial bind at the moment to be like, it's all right for you that you can do that. But again, as we say, if we follow the process, follow the system, be disciplined about it, you're going to get the reward. I know for me, when I did my first profit distributions, it took me until my third one to actually be able to spend it. Like, my first one was like $27 or something because I started towards the end of the quarter.
That's great.
I was like, why do I spend that on? Like, that's ridiculous. Then the next one was a bit more, and I bought a pair of Converse shoes. And then the next one, it was a little bit more, and it was like, oh, okay. And then from then on, we have a goal. So for us, our mind gets spent on travel. That's what we love to do as a family. So every year it's like, okay, what's the travel look like this year? And that goes towards that as well. So it gets me motivated to stick to everything, but it also gets the family involved because they can see that the work that I'm doing in my business, that we get this reward from it as well. And it doesn't have to be travel. It could be things, it could be whatever else. But also when I hear people say, oh, I haven't taken my profit distribution. No, you've got to take your profit distribution. It's like you've done 99% of it and then you've stopped at that last piece. And as we said, you've got to do it, commit to it, do every part of the process. Yeah. Otherwise, it doesn't work as well.
Yeah. And I'm just sort of listening to what I said before, and I don't want people to think that, that I don't understand because, now I don't have any financial distress. I did, like for 20 odd years of business, I had, sleepless nights, living from hand to mouth. How are we going to pay for this? We when we first started the business, we had to sell the car to pay for groceries. Like, that's the place that we were living in. And I just want people to understand that when we went from hand to mouth and financial distress, but just doing it the way that everybody else did it, so we just thought it was normal. You're kind of just living with that distress. And then you learn some things and you implement them. Our revenue didn't increase for many, many years, but our lifestyle and our emotional experience did change. So I hammer this home whenever I get the opportunity, is the answer isn't in increased revenue. And I say to the answer.
Never the answer. It's never the first answer.
No. I think that I do a podcast inside the Tool Shed, which is our app for builders, and it's called the Builders Business Success Podcast, and there's an intro in it, and the guy who does our video editing put it all together. You're on it, but Mike's on it right towards the end, and he's talking about, he said, when people tell me that that the secret to improving my business is increasing my turnover, he leans into the microphone and he screams, "Liar!" And it's at the start of the intro to this podcast, and I laugh every single time. I laugh because he's a funny dude, but that is just what so many people think, that I need to increase my revenue. We need to build more houses. We need to get bigger projects. And I think that, well, I know that we've got builders that are sort of perhaps $1 million or less of revenue, and they have a fantastic life. Yet I've spoken to builders who have $20 million of revenue. Or one guy pops into my mind who didn't jump into our program, had a wage of around about $40,000 or $45,000 a year, managing a $20 million turnover. And this dude, talk about stress. it was unbelievable. And it's just so totally possible to have an incredibly free life with a small amount of revenue. And what makes sense to me is if you're expanding your revenue, that means you've got more clients. You've probably got more homes in the ground, which means that you've got more team, or whether that's subbies, more spinning plates, less time. And every single time we've seen a client, without fixing up their business processes, have increased their revenue, their profit has gone down. Not sometimes, every time. Stress goes up, free time goes down, profit goes down whenever you increase your revenue when you've got a broken model. It's just nuts. But it's what the majority of people do.
And that's the thing. I think it's very easy. We were those people who just did what we were kind of told and what the regular people do. We're not special. We had to go through those hardships. We had to go through all of those things. And I always use myself as an example. My dad was quite sick and passed away a couple of years ago. I worked out I was 40% less in my business because I took him to all these appointments and treatments and so on and so forth. It was the most profitable year I had because I had Profit First set up in my business, had for a number of years, and it was very easy for me to make decisions because I could see exactly, yes, I can take this client on, or no, I should take that one on. It was so clear. And in a period of time where it was so stressful from a personal point of view, I didn't have to expend any more energy making business decisions because I had the system set up, and it very easily told me what I could and couldn't do, how much time I could have off. Like I worked a lot less, had less clients, but still was more profitable just because I had that system set in place. And unfortunately, there's going to be those times in our businesses where we're sick, somebody else is sick, something goes wrong. And we want to make sure that we're prepared for those points in time. So
it's a beautiful thing. I know that there's one of our members comes into mind now. They're just having a horrendous time with some family issues, and one of their parents is very ill and going into a nursing home, and they're fundamentally full time looking after their
figure it all out.
and all of that sort of stuff. And I said, anything we can do to help? And they said, no, the business is amazing. Like the business is going gangbusters. And isn't that the whole idea? Isn't that the purpose of your business, to give you the time and financial freedom to either go and enjoy what your passion is, or be able to deal with, the challenges that life throws at you? Because imagine running a business that you're living from hand to mouth, and then that sort of thing presents itself as well. You start to have, a child that's got a drug problem, or a parent that's got a health problem, and you've got to deal with it. You have to deal with it.
And you can't just say, "Please wait."
No. So implementing Profit First is absolutely critical. Like, you just got rocks in your head if you're not doing it.
And that's why I love to talk to you about this, Mick, because you're always such an advocate. And I think, as you say, you've been at the worst possible position, and you followed the system, and you are now here. And I think it's very easy for people to look at people who, for example, are in your situation, go, "Oh, it's easy for him."
Yeah.
But it wasn't easy. Like, there's no easy profit road for certain people and the hard way for other people. Like, we all have to come through the same process. So if we could just leave my listeners with two things. One piece of advice for them, and then second thing, where they can, your podcast, your tool shed, all of your details, please.
Piece of advice is, obviously, if you're not implementing Profit First 100%, do it. And then the other experience I've had with it with some people, even our own members, and man, do I fire up and jump up and down when I hear it, that I just need to get a few things, sorted before we implement Profit First. I've just got to pay a few bills, or we've got to, no. Right now, this instant, you open up the bank accounts and you start with just 1%, because it's not about the amount, dollar figure. It's about the behavior. And if you can start that behavior and you end up, at the end of 90 days, you've got $27 in your profit account, that means that you've got $13.50 to go and buy ice cream with, and you absolutely should do it. You don't ever go, it's only $13.50, I'm not going to bother, I'll wait till it's a decent amount. No, you get that $13.50 and you go and buy ice cream. I like ice cream, salted caramel and chocolate. Have a double scoop and go buy it, and you go, this is my reward. Sit in the sun and reward yourself with that $13.50. That would be my advice: is do not wait. There are no excuses. There is no relevant excuse, none. And the second question was where to find
Tell us
it.
about you. What type of your podcasts, your tool shed, all the details.
Well, so we've got a podcast called The Tool Shed. So that's out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and so forth. And we've also got The Tool Shed, which is an environment. It's just a free environment for builders and trades-based businesses. It's just an app that you've got on your phone or your computer, and you get access to another podcast, the Builder's Business Success Podcast, which you've been on a number of times. And there's just a ton of resources in there. And for me, the reason we build it is community is so, so important as a contributor to the success of a business. Trying to do it yourself just sucks. And if you can get into a community of success-focused, sharing, contributing type people, you've just struck gold. And that's what we've created with the Tool Shed. That's the culture in there to help and share and contribute. And why take all of the time, effort, and money that it costs to learn from experience when you can learn from other people's experience? Just ask questions, not make the mistakes that they made, but gain the benefit of the lesson that they can give you for nothing. But the secret to that is being a contributor. I think from a cultural point of view, if you're going to join a community, your number one priority should be, how can I contribute to this community? Because if you have that mindset, and there are a bunch of other people with that mindset, you get 20, 30, 40 times more out of that than someone who comes to a community for what they can get out of it. And that's what we're trying to build with the Tool Shed. So come join us.
Thank you very much, Mick. Always a pleasure chatting.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.